They've been designing, building, and maintaining Earth's ecosystems for over 100 million years. Ants are nature's original architects, and they never went to design school. While human architects spend years in school, ants come pre-programmed with unbelievable skills that would make Frank Lloyd Wright jealous. In our previous video, we explored how invasive ants are homogenizing Earth's biodiversity. Today, we'll discover the flip side of that story, how native ant communities create and sustain the ecological diversity we're fighting to protect, a job they've been perfecting since the days of the dinosaurs. By understanding the positive, critical role ants play in healthy ecosystems, we gain powerful tools in the battle against biodiversity loss. And we'll meet the scientists and conservation heroes working to restore these delicate relationships before it's too late, even if it sometimes means getting a little too personally acquainted with the research subjects. To appreciate how native ants build biodiversity, we need to understand their role as ecosystem engineers, organisms that physically modify their environments and create habitats for other species. Think of them as nature's construction crew, except they never go on coffee breaks. In a single hectare of tropical soil, ants may move over 10 tons of earth annually. That's the equivalent of 20 adult elephants, all without a single hard hat. This bioturbation, mixing and aerating soil, increases water infiltration, redistributes nutrients, and creates microhabitats for countless other organisms, from bacteria to plant roots. When scientists experimentally removed ants from forest plots, they discovered dramatic changes. Decomposition slowed by up to 50%. Nutrient cycling decreased, and seed dispersal nearly stopped. The soil itself became more compact and less hospitable to other life forms. It was like firing an entire maintenance staff and watching the building slowly fall apart. Consider the leafcutter ants of the Americas. These remarkable farmers cut and transport fresh vegetation to underground chambers where they cultivate fungal gardens. Their massive nests, some containing over 5 million workers, can extend 8 meters below ground and cover 50 square meters. If ants had real estate agents, these would be listed as luxury subterranean condos with excellent ventilation and built-in food production. These industrious insects create biodiversity hotspots. Their nests concentrate nutrients, increase soil porosity, and maintain distinctive microclimates. Plants growing near abandoned leafcutter nests show higher growth rates and greater species diversity. It's like moving into a neighborhood after a really good landscaping company finished its work. In drier ecosystems, harvester ants serve as crucial seed dispersers. By collecting and storing seeds underground, they protect them from predators and fire. Many plant species have evolved specialized seed structures specifically to attract ants, who then distribute them away from the parent plant. It's a botanical version of, please take my kids away from here so they can thrive somewhere else. This ant-mediated seed dispersal, called myrmecory, shapes the composition of plant communities across forests and grasslands worldwide. Both sides benefit from working together. Plants that use ants to disperse their seeds evolve to have seeds with a fat-filled structure on their exterior called an elaiosome. The elaiosome is a delicious snack to an ant, but just an expendable accessory to the seed. Ants carry the entire seed into their nests beneath the soil surface and feed on the elaiosome. They deposit the leftover seed into their trash piles, which end up being a perfect nursery for the seed to develop. Ants' trash piles are underground heaps of decaying plant and animal material, which are full of nutrients. Thanks to the ants, the seeds get carried away from their parent plant, buried in nourishing soil, and are protected from predators like slugs and mice that would eat the entire seed, not just the elaiosome. Myrmecory is a widespread phenomenon with over 11,000 plant species worldwide depending on this partnership. In some ecosystems, up to 50% of understory plants rely on ants to disperse their seeds. That's right. Plants have been using ant delivery services long before humans thought of DoorDash. Beyond reshaping physical environments, many ants function as living shields, protecting other organisms through their territorial behavior and predatory prowess. Think of them as tiny bodyguards with multiple arms and a serious attitude problem. The relationship between acacia trees and their resident ants represents one of nature's most remarkable partnerships. In exchange for shelter inside hollow thorns and nutrient-rich food bodies, ants fiercely defend the plant against herbivores. It's the original protection racket. Nice tree you got here. Be a shame if something happened to it. The ants will swarm and attack any herbivore, from insects to large mammals like giraffes that attempt to feed on their host plant. Imagine being a giraffe peacefully enjoying lunch when suddenly thousands of angry security guards start biting your tongue. That'll ruin anyone's appetite. Some species even clear competing vegetation around their host tree, creating a protective zone that reduces competition and fire risk. They're basically practicing aggressive landscaping, the botanical equivalent of saying, "This is our turf." When ecologists experimentally removed ants from some acacia trees, the results were dramatic. Within months, the unprotected trees suffered intense herbivory, slower growth, and higher mortality, demonstrating the critical role these tiny guardians play. It's like firing your entire security team and then wondering why your office keeps getting robbed. This pattern repeats worldwide. In Southeast Asia, macaranga trees house Crematogaster ants. In the Amazon, Cecropia trees partner with Azteca ants. Each relationship represents an evolutionary dance millions of years in the making, and each creates protected habitat for the countless organisms that interact with these plants. It's like nature figured out the subscription security service model long before ADT. Even relationships that might seem exploitive often increase overall biodiversity. When ants tend honeydew-producing insects like aphids, they produce enemy-free space that allows these specialized herbivores to thrive. The aphids produce sweet honeydew that the ants collect. It's basically a protection for dessert arrangement that would make any mob boss nod in approval. The insects feeding on plant sap, in turn, support predators and parasitoids that can only complete their life cycle on these specific hosts. It's a bizarre food chain that starts with plant juice and ends with specialized predators, only made possible by ants with a sweet tooth. The result is a multi-layered food web with greater species richness than would exist without the ants' protective presence. Remove the ants, and entire branches of this web collapse. It's like ecological Jenga, but with millions of tiny pieces, and we're pulling out the bottom row. Perhaps the most extraordinary dimension of ant-generated biodiversity lies in the specialized organisms that have evolved to live alongside them. These bromecophiles, meaning ant lovers, represent a hidden world of biodiversity that we're only beginning to understand. Think of them as the ultimate house guests who never leave, but instead of eating all your food and forgetting to flush, they've evolved their entire biology around your lifestyle. Take the rove beetles. Scientists estimate that across their 64,000 species, hundreds of lineages have independently evolved to live within ant colonies. Many have modified body shapes, chemical signatures, and behaviors specifically for life with ants. If humans tried this level of home invasion, we'd call it a sitcom premise. Some species have evolved such extreme adaptations that they physically resemble their host ants, a remarkable case of convergent evolution. It's the insect equivalent of showing up to a party wearing the exact same outfit as the host, except in this case, it's literally your body shape. Others produce appeasement compounds from specialized glands, causing ants to accept them as colony members. Essentially, they've evolved to smell like friend instead of lunch. Blue butterflies in the family Lacanidae represent another extraordinary example. Over 6,000 species strong, a vast number have evolved relationships with ants. Some of their caterpillars secrete sugary rewards that ants harvest, essentially paying rent with homemade candy. Others have evolved to mimic ant larvae so perfectly that worker ants will carry them into the nest and care for them as their own. It's like the insect version of leaving a foundling on someone's doorstep, except the baby is actually a very convincing robot. The list continues. Specialized crickets, mites, flies, silverfish, millipedes, spiders, even snails have evolved to live with ants. Each adaptation represents a unique evolutionary pathway, and each contributes to Earth's biodiversity. It's like ants are running the world's most exclusive nightclub, and everyone's trying different disguises to get past the bouncers. Scientists estimate that up to 100,000 species may have evolved as ant symbionts, dedicated to living with ants. That's more species than all animals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians combined. Many remain undiscovered, and many may be lost before we even know they exist as invasive ants displace their specific host species. It's like burning down a library before we've read most of the books. Army ants represent biodiversity engines. A single colony may host hundreds of symbiont species that have evolved to follow the ants' nomadic lifestyle. When these iconic ants decline due to habitat fragmentation or climate change, we lose not just the ants themselves, but entire communities of associated species. Imagine if your entire apartment building suddenly had to follow you wherever you moved. Now imagine that apartment building is actually a complex ecosystem with hundreds of specialized species. That's army ant life. Now that we understand how native ants create and sustain biodiversity, let's examine where these relationships are most threatened and what we can do to protect them. Tropical forests represent the epicenter of ant diversity. A single hectare can contain over 100 ant species, each with unique ecological roles and symbiont relationships. Yet, these are precisely the ecosystems facing the greatest threat from deforestation, fragmentation, and climate change. When forests are fragmented, edge effects alter temperature, humidity, and light penetration. Many specialized ant species cannot survive these altered conditions and disappear from frost fragments, taking their ecological relationships with them. Army ants require large territories, up to 30 hectares, to sustain their nomadic colonies. In fragmented landscapes, they're among the first to vanish. Their loss triggers cascading effects through the ecosystem, as birds, beetles, flies, and butterflies that depend on them disappear also. Island ecosystems represent another critical battleground. Their isolation has driven the evolution of unique ant species found nowhere else. Yet islands are particularly vulnerable to invasive species and climate change. Climate change creates additional pressure. As temperatures rise, the ranges of heat-tolerant invasive ants expand, while specialized native species face physiological limits they cannot overcome. The result is a one-way replacement process, with diverse native ant communities giving way to simplified systems dominated by invasive generalists. And with each local extinction, we lose the biodiversity those native ants helped create and maintain. Despite these challenges, dedicated researchers and conservationists are fighting back and achieving remarkable successes that give us hope for the future. In Australia, restoration ecologists are using native ants as indicators of ecosystem recovery. By monitoring ant communities, they can track how well-degraded landscapes are returning to health after mining or agriculture. The results are encouraging. When restoration is done right, native ant communities can rebound within decades, bringing their biodiversity benefits with them. On Christmas Island, intensive management of yellow crazy ants has allowed red crab populations to begin recovering in treated areas. Scientists use targeted baiting methods that affect the invasive ants while sparing native species. On smaller islands, complete eradication of invasive ants has proven possible with careful planning and sustained effort. These success stories provide blueprints for larger scale interventions. New research from Kenya is providing additional insights. When ecologists studied acacia trees with different native ant species, they discovered that some ant species are particularly beneficial during droughts, helping trees maintain healthy carbon fixation and water status. This research helps us understand which ant-plant partnerships may be most resilient in the face of climate change. Citizen science initiatives are expanding our knowledge of ant distributions and ecology. Smartphone apps allow anyone to document ant species and their behaviors, creating a global monitoring network that can detect problems early. Education represents another powerful tool. When people understand the extraordinary role ants play in maintaining healthy ecosystems, they become advocates for their protection. So what can you do to help protect native ant biodiversity and the ecological relationships they sustain? Besides not stepping on them intentionally, of course. That's Ant Protection 101. When traveling, be mindful of hitchhiking species. Inspect gear before moving between natural areas, and always respect biosecurity measures designed to prevent the spread of invasive species. Remember, what happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas, and what happens in the Amazon should definitely stay in the Amazon. In your own yard or community, create habitat for native ants by planting native vegetation. Many native plants have co-evolved with local ant species and support their populations. Think of it as creating a 5-star resort for the ecological workforce in your neighborhood. And no tiny pool umbrellas required. Limit pesticide use, especially broad-spectrum insecticides that kill beneficial native ants alongside pests. If you must treat for invasive ants, use targeted baits rather than widespread spraying. It's like trying to get rid of one annoying party guest by setting the whole house on fire. There are better ways. Join citizen science initiatives like iNaturalist or AntWeb to document the ant species in your area. Your observations contribute valuable data to researchers tracking both native and invasive populations. Plus, you'll suddenly become the life of the party when you can identify ant species at backyard barbecues. Well, certain types of parties anyway. Support conservation organizations working to protect intact ecosystems and restore degraded ones. Healthy, connected habitats provide the best defense for native ant communities and the biodiversity they sustain. Donate your time or money. Ants have been working for free for 120 million years, so it seems only fair we pitch in. For 120 million years, ants have been shaping Earth's ecosystems, creating niches that countless other species have evolved to fit. Their complex societies represent one of evolution's great success stories, and they did it all without smartphones, social media, or a single PowerPoint presentation. By protecting native ant diversity, we're preserving not just individual species, but the ecological relationships that have shaped life on Earth. In the tiny architects beneath our feet lies the foundation of the biodiversity we cherish. They may not wear tiny hard hats or carry miniature blueprints, but they're building something far more impressive than our grandest human structures. The choices we make today will determine whether future generations inherit ecosystems shaped by diverse native ants or simplified systems dominated by a handful of invasive species. The ants have been building biodiversity for millions of years without asking for recognition, raises, or even lunch breaks. The least we can do is protect their legacy. After all, they were here long before us, and if we're not careful, they'll be here long after we're gone, probably still running a better society than we managed. If you found this exploration of nature's tiny architects fascinating, you're going to love our next video on this series. We'll flip the script and explore how plants evolved to manipulate insects like ants, bees, and even birds to do their bidding. It's a fascinating tale of botanical genius that might make you wonder who's really in charge of our planet. Don't forget to subscribe to Gray Matter Spasms for more mind-expanding journeys into the hidden wonders of nature. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next episode in our insect series. Thanks for watching, and remember, the next time you spot an ant, you're not just looking at an insect, you're witnessing one of Earth's greatest ecosystem engineers at work. I'll see you in the next video.